Today, we're discussing the impact of fuel optimization with Jeroen van Pelt, Director, Key Accounts and Wetstock Management, and Tim Firkins, Senior Manager, Key Accounts and Business Development. Listen as we examine how fuel optimization can have a positive impact on fuel retail businesses globally to support retailers now and in the future.
Hi Tim, hi Jeroen, thanks for joining us today. As we know, managing all aspects of a fuel retail business can be a really difficult job fraught with challenges. Can fuel optimization have a positive impact on fuel businesses, supporting retailers now and into the future? Let's find out. Jeroen, when we talk about fuel optimization, can you explain what we mean?
Yeah, first of all, we like to talk about fuel system optimization. And we mean with that is actually the fuel process from terminal to the end tank of the customer. We try to optimize that process to make sure that the retailer has best possible way of doing business and optimizes profits basically.
Why is fuel optimization important?
I think the answer to that is kind of what Jeroen just alluded to. Is because fuel system optimization really translates to fuel margin optimization. So if we're able to improve business processes, from the terminal where you store the fuel all the way to the tank that's on the station, and then even through to the consumer's vehicle, if we're able to control losses both in transit from the terminal and once the fuel is stored on site, able to stay in compliance, for example, in the most cost effective way, the most resource effective way, we're able to optimize the supply chain. I think it's easy to imagine how if you can improve all of those kind of processes in all of those business critical areas, then you'll improve your operation, but you'll also ultimately improve your bottom line. So I think that's the best way of describing why it's so important.
Definitely. And will fuel optimization still hold this level of importance during the global energy transition and in the future?
So I would say absolutely it will, yeah. And I would actually argue it will probably be even more so, even more important in the future, actually. I think we all know that our customers, DFS's customers, their businesses are changing quite dramatically before the industry's eyes, really, which doesn't mean, though, that they can afford to take their eye off the ball when it comes to all of this, just because they're, the types of energy that they're retailing are changing. Actually, it doesn't mean that they can afford to take their foot off the gas. So, on the pun. So if you think about fuel retailers, for example, having to sweat their assets more while they sit and watch what's going on in the industry, and while they decide on what their next steps are, do they invest? Do they continue to sweat assets? That has some ramifications in that those assets need to be looked after more efficiently and for longer, potentially. And I think the other thing is that we also see that governments and consumers are kind of changing their perspective. So where maybe if you just think about fuel loss, for example, where in the past, I think maybe undetected fuel loss may not kind of stirred the same emotions with the average consumer as it does now, where consumers are more environmentally conscious, expect more kind of corporate responsibility, etc. So I think we can expect that to only increase over time, not get less. And then I'd say, I guess my final point on that, it would be, we're expecting and starting to see kind of fuel locations, fuel sites transitioning into energy hubs, if you want to call it that. And I think when that happens, it's going to be critical that actually the traditional fuel assets, the fuel pumps and tanks, etc., on those energy hubs are going to have to be managed just as carefully as they are now, even if it maybe even more carefully than they are now, and to be managed as in a more effective way, and managed with less resources in a more effective way. So fuel system optimization and our fuel system optimization tools allow a fuel retailer and energy retailer to achieve all of those things I've just said.
And is the fuel system optimization offering the same globally?
In principle, yes, but we do have to keep in mind several aspects of that, because we know that all retailers in the world, of course, have different levels of automation, for example. And what we do and we try to do is collect data from site, analyze the data, and make sure that we help the retailer to optimize its process in that way. If the automation level is not to a specific maturity level, then of course you cannot collect the data and we cannot basically help the retailer. So that is one aspect. The other aspect is that, from a global view, different automation suppliers and also different technical solutions are there. So we do see the possibility every part of the world to deliver this service. However, some aspects, some details might be different depending on what we just explained.
And how can fuel system optimization help make day-to-day operations smoother and more profitable?
Well, it's all about the margin, of course, these days. So retailers they work on very tight margins. So everything that they can find and what they can get help with to optimize the flow of the process of the product through their stations and deliver it as quickly and as smooth as possible to the end customer, that will increase their margin. Also, if something happens, the speed of fixing the problem and making sure that next time it doesn't happen again, or maybe has less impact, that of course is also very important to them. So besides just analyzing the data and making visible where the problems are, we also are very keen on helping the retailer by providing him actual items basically to do something to improve the process as a whole. So that will, in the end, increase his margin and improve his bottom line result.
And Tim, what is the impact on fuel optimization on compliance and asset management?
Compliance and asset management, I would say, is quite an interesting element of, interesting and important element of fuel system optimization. I think if we think like in some countries, tracking your compliance and staying within compliance is a bit of a given. Here in the UK is a good example of that. As a fuel retailer in countries like this, you already know that you need to have the best tools to help you to achieve that staying in compliance in a kind of efficient and cost-effective and resource-effective way. And our fuel system optimization package, our compliance and asset management package, allows fuel retailers to do that. But I'd say it gets more interesting actually, where we're starting to see a bit of a trend towards the introduction of new compliance requirements in new countries as well. So we saw it happening in Spain, for example, several years ago now, but still being worked through now today. And then a more recent example, we saw it happening in Uruguay. Both of those countries are examples of, in recent years, regulations and compliance requirements being brought in. So I think it's clear that compliance in particular doesn't just apply to sort of the traditional compliance markets that our industry knows about, but in future will apply to more markets as well. I think even though we're in fact, probably because of the fact that we're in this energy transition, I think it's becoming even more and more important, as I said earlier, to look after assets, and that includes looking after the compliance of those assets, the maintenance of those assets, etc. And I think, as I mentioned earlier, when we can see that fuel retailers are sweating their assets more, they're keeping their assets for longer, and with older assets, as with older equipment on stations, comes more maintenance challenges, because the equipment has to be maintained for longer. It has to be maintained. Older equipment has to be maintained that's out of warranty, etc., etc. And that an effective asset and maintenance and compliance management tool will really come into its own with managing all of those activities. And again, as we keep repeating, the impact of all of that, I would say, is increased margins and increased profits ultimately, which is what this is all about.
And then can you go into a bit more detail about DFS's Wetstock product and solutions portfolio and how it can offer enhanced fuel optimization capabilities to fuel retail businesses?
Yeah, sure. So the DFS fuel system optimization portfolio, as Jeroen sort of started this discussion explaining, I like to think of it as it's like a portfolio of kind of data analytics solutions to optimize fuel operations from terminal to tank. And that comprises of a number of different kind of solutions within the portfolio. So we have the Wetstock, which helps us to manage and control losses on site with the ultimate aim of reducing losses on site. We have DFS compliance and asset management, which is what we've just been talking about. We have remote diagnostics and remote maintenance tools as well for both dispensers and ATG, which allow us again to look after those assets and to more efficiently maintain those assets. We have a partnership with a company called Bottomline for supply chain optimization and fuel replenishment planning, which helps us to reduce supply chain costs and to keep sites fully stocked. And across all of those solutions, it's important, I think, to note that we have common data sources, common data shared across them, which really allows us to give a full portfolio to our customers, which they can rely on wholly.
And would it be fair to say the future of Wetstock management goes way beyond data reconciliation? And if so, can you explain a little bit more why?
I think absolutely. So I think data reconciliation is the first level. And then you get visibility of what's going on. But many of our customers, also other players, they say, okay, now we have the data. We see what's happening, but what's next? How can we make the problems go away, resolve them, and even better, how can we prevent those problems? So I think more and more we're going from a data analyst company, actually more a service company, where we say, okay, we will help you real time to improve your processes and make sure that you basically have the best possible service towards your customers and make sure everything works well.
Yeah, I'll just add to that. It's also, I think, data reconciliation it gives you some, data that says what's happening on your site, but you don't really truly know. You don't really truly have the information you need to sort of turn that data into actionable insights to be able to take action on that data. And I think that's what Jeroen's referring to there. So that's one of the main differences, I would say. Information, not data, and actionable insight based on that information.
Okay. And let's talk about what fuel retailers need to do now that'll see their business flourish well into the future.
I think that's an important point because traditionally fuel retailers invest in hardware, right? Just to getting a good pump or getting a good point of sale. What is of course very important. However, thinking about architecture and how basically connect everything together and invest in some kind of a data collection setup that will help him basically for the future to be more proactive in getting things up to a higher level. So the message is invest a bit more than only in hardware, but also think about the bigger picture basically.
Yeah, and I would add my message to that, my one tip, if you like, which I would say, I think fuel retailers need to sort of do their due diligence on their own business and kind of not assume that they don't have a problem that needs solving. So take losses, for example, don't assume that you don't have losses. Don't assume that the losses that you have are already acceptable, because the chances are they may not be. And go even further and say, just because you do things the way you've always done things, it doesn't necessarily mean there's not a better way than how you're doing it today. There actually probably is. So yeah, I would say do that sort of due diligence and that homework, which is, I think I said my one tip. There's probably several tips in one, but that's why I was at.
Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to Focusing on Fuel Optimization with Jeroen and Tim. We hope you enjoy this episode. If you'd like to support the podcast, feel free to share it with others, post about it on social media, or leave a review. To catch the latest from Dover Fueling Solutions, you can follow us on LinkedIn or visit our website at www.doverfuelingsolutions.com. Thanks again, and we'll see you next month, where we continue to fuel the conversation.